So in this session, we are going to look at some of the key theories of motivation. I'm not going to go into a massive amount of depth with each of the theories, but we will explore them at a surface level and also the impact on leadership. And when we get together online, we will look at some of the practicalities of these. So first of all, let's look at what we mean by motivation. I guess the simplest definition, or the simplest way to describe it, is people doing willingly and well those things that need to be done, or what moves people towards achieving a goal. And that goal could be a personal goal, or it could be an organisational goal. Now you may just want to pause this presentation for a moment and just think about what you will see in a highly motivated team. So a team that is doing things willingly and well. What will you see and what will you hear? So I guess there's going to be a bit of a buzz, a high energy. There's going to be certainly a degree of high performance, maybe a determination when faced with a barrier or a problem. There'll be good cooperation within the team and also with other teams in the organisation. People will be accepting willingly their responsibility. And also, they will be accommodating change. Yes, there still may be a little bit of resistance, but that resistance is not going to derail the change in any kind of way. There'll definitely be a certain amount of energy within that particular team. But what about a team that's not motivated? Well, yes, I guess there will be the opposite of those things that you will see in a team that is motivated, but you might see some other things as well. So, for example, apathy. But there may also be poor timekeeping. There may be a high level of short-term absenteeism as people withdraw their labour in the easiest way possible by taking a day off. And yes, you will see the things like lack of cooperation, resistance to change, but also there may be a rise in conflict between individuals and the leaders, between the teams. So all of these things may actually be a sign of a team that is lacking in motivation. So what affects motivation at work? Well, when we look at some of the theories, we'll have a look at what some of the psychologists say. But there are three main things. One is individual differences, and that's the needs and wants and values and interests of those individuals. It's about how a job is designed. How easy is it to achieve what you need to achieve? And then there's the organisational practices, the policies, the procedures, the reward systems. All these things can impact how motivated people are towards the achievement of goals. So what do the psychologists say? Over the next few minutes, we're going to look at some of the key theories of motivation. And yes, some of these are quite old, but I think they are still valid. So we're going to have a look at some theories of motivation that go back, say, 60 years or so. So before we dip our toes into the pool of motivational theory, let's explore the concept of need and wants. Now, one way of looking at this is to talk about our behaviour. And the purpose of our behaviour is to achieve an outcome. And that outcome may be to satisfy a need or a want. So a need is anything that is required. We need food, we need water, we need companionship, we need a purpose. A want is a conscious recognition of that need. Now, a want may be linked to a need that is fundamental, or a want may be linked to a need that I guess is a nice to have. And this is where we're going to start in terms of our trip around the theories of motivation. So the first set of theories start to look at what we call a content approach. And a content approach is an assumption that individuals are motivated by a desire to fulfill inner needs. So one of the most recognised theories that deals with the content approach is Maslow's hierarchy of needs from the 1960s. Now, Maslow's hierarchy of needs starts to look at how needs, once satisfied, uncover a next layer of needs. So the starting point is looking at what we call physiological needs. the need for food and water. And once we've got that need satisfied, the next need comes into play, which is the need for safety. And once we feel safe, the next need comes into play, which is the need for belonging, a social need, to belong to a group. And then it's about having a feeling of self-worth, seeing that you've got a place within that group, or an esteem need. And then finally, it's the need of self-actualization, of being the best you possibly can be. Now, Maslow was talking about basic human needs, but these have been applied to organizations. So how does it apply to organizations? Well, there's the physiological need. I guess it's the need to be able to put food on the table, to be able to care for your family. There are the safety needs, job security. So you feel that your job is secure, that you're not going to lose your job at the drop of a hat. It's about social needs, about working in a team, being part of a bigger thing, of being part of an organisation. It's about esteem needs, about being valued for what you do, for what you contribute to the organisation. And self-actualisation, which is about growth, about developing, about moving on and becoming the best you possibly can be. Now, all these things are important, and what Maslow is saying is that if these lower level needs, for example, the physiological need or the safety need isn't satisfied, then the social needs and the esteem needs will not have an impact. So, for example, if you feel that your job is under threat, being part of a team may not have the same motivational effect as it would if you thought that your job was secure. So what Maslow is saying is that we actually are motivated by a need that is apparent at the time. In the late 1960s, Clayton Alderfer further developed Maslow's theory by building what he called the ERG theory, and basically saying there are three classifications of needs: existence, basic material required for survival and safety; relatedness, social needs and status and interpersonal relationships; and growth, desire for personal development. So the Alderfer theory looks at ERG, existence, relatedness and growth. So how does Alderfer's ERG theory map onto Maslow's theory? Well, the existence is about the physiological and safety needs, the things that we need to be able to exist, i.e. food, water, feeling safe. The relatedness is about our social needs, being part of a group, being part of a bigger movement. And then the growth needs is about esteem and self-actualization. In the 1990s, Maslow's theory was further developed, and three additional higher level needs were introduced. The first was around thinking and cognition. So this cognitive need is about the need for knowledge and the need for meaning. And then there's the aesthetic need. This is the need for beauty, for balance, for form. And at the top of the hierarchy, the transcendence need. And this is the need to help others to self-actualize, to help others to be the best they possibly can be. Before we move on from Maslow and Alderfer, let's just summarize where we're at. Both these models look at needs, not wants. They both operate on an ascending scale, and what that means is that a lower need has to be satisfied before the next need becomes apparent. And it says that a satisfied need is no longer a motivator. It's the next level need that becomes the motivator. But also with this hierarchy of need, people can revert back. So, for example, if you have got the need for belonging or esteem, in the pocket, and then suddenly there is a feeling that your job is under threat, people may move back down to that safety need. And if needs are not met, it is displayed in their behaviour, basically saying that their behaviour will be focused towards meeting that particular need. In his book, The Achieving Society, which was published in 1961, David McClelland gives us his human motivational theory. And in that theory, he states that every person has one of three main driving motivators. That is the need for achievement, the need for power, and the need for affiliation. And he says that these three needs are found in varying degrees in everybody. He also states that these motivators are not inherent. We develop these through our culture and our life experiences. The need for achievement is about achieving challenging but realistic goals. And those who are motivated by a need for achievement have a strong need for feedback, a strong need of feedback that tells them that they're on the right track. The need for power and influence is about having an impact. People who are motivated by this need like their ideas to prevail. It's linked to their level of personal status and their prestige. So they are motivated by situations or goals that put them in a powerful position. The need for affiliation is about belonging. People who are motivated by a need for affiliation like to be part of a team, but they like to be held in popular regard within that team. They need the interaction of others. They need friendly relationships. Now, what McClelland is saying is that we have a mixture of all these three needs. We're not one and none of the others. It's a combination. But there are some that may drive us forward more than others. In 1959, Frederick Hertzberg asked a group of American workers two questions. The first was, what leads to extreme dissatisfaction in your job? And the second was, what leads to extreme satisfaction in your job? And this is what he found out. The dissatisfiers centered around policy and administration, and also working conditions, level of salary, status within the organisation, feelings of security, and also the way that people were supervised and the relationship at work between leaders and members of staff. These were all the things that could cause dissatisfaction. The satisfiers, the things that really motivated, or the higher levels of motivation, were things about a sense of achievement, recognition for doing a good job, the work itself, about how challenging and stimulating the work was, how the job was enriched, how it wasn't just focused in one area, giving people a sense of responsibility, and also giving people an opportunity to advance in their role. These were the things that people said really motivated them. So Hertzberg coined the phrase hygiene factors and motivators. So the hygiene or the maintenance factors were those things like status, security, relationship with peers, salary, working conditions. And if we think of those as a launch pad, and what Hertzberg was arguing was that the motivation factors, the sense of achievement, the recognition, the work itself, etc., only have an effect if that launch pad is secure and stable. So, for example, the status, security, relationships with subordinates, they need to be there, or they need to be satisfied before those motivational factors really start to have an effect. So the hygiene factors are merely this launch pad, and when damaged or undermined, there is no platform for the motivators to have an effect. So if we have a look at this graph, which identifies Hertzberg's motivators and hygiene factors, you can see that those that have a high degree of frequency of cause of satisfaction are achievement, recognition, responsibility, advancement, etc. Those that cause a degree of dissatisfaction are things like policy and administration, interpersonal relationships. How does that relate to your view of working within the university in your role? Do these things like achievement and recognition motivate the people around you? And how frustrating do people feel about the policy and administration or the relationships with management? So Hertzberg is really saying here is that the things like policy administration need to be positive, need to be viewed in a positive light for those satisfaction factors, should I say, have an effect. In 1977, Sanzota carried out a study across the United States, and he looked at the motivators of white-collar workers and the motivators of blue-collar workers. And what we see here is rank order of the motivating factors. So you will see from the white-collar workers, it is about interesting work, opportunity to develop, having enough information and authority, whereas the blue-collar workers, it's about good pay, help and equipment. You will notice that the white-collar workers, pay comes in 10th place, whereas with the blue-collar workers, it's in first place. Now, that is partly due to the interest of the job, the ability to craft the job in a way that suits your needs. And the argument is that with the white-collar workers, Sanzota found that it was the work itself that was a motivating factor. With the blue-collar workers, the work may have been monotonous or mundane, and it was what the work gave them in terms of good pay that were the motivating factors. So before we move on and have a look at the process approach to motivation, let's just summarise where we are. So we've looked at a number of different theories and models, but let's compare Maslow to Hertzberg. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is on the left. So we've got physiological, safety, social, esteem needs and self-actualization. The work of Hertzberg is on the right. And if you compare the two, you will see that the hygiene and maintenance factors tend to be about job security, holidays, good pay, and that is about the social, safety and physiological needs. The motivating factors is about interesting and challenging work. It's about doing something meaningful. It's about achievement, which speak to the more esteem and self-actualization needs. So the two things can be combined side by side. So the process approach is concerned with how and why people choose between alternative behaviours to meet their goals. And in a sense, it's about looking at those kind of external influences. A good place to start is Vroom's expectancy model, which looks at expectancy, instrumentality and valence. And it's saying that motivation is the interplay between these three things. So expectancy is the expectation and confidence about what an individual feels they are capable of achieving. So it's about having the skills and knowledge to be able to do the job. Instrumentality is about a belief that performance or increased performance leads to a particular outcome. So individuals will achieve what they want to achieve. And valence is about the emotional orientation to those outcomes. In other words, the outcome is of value to the individual. Another way of looking at this is by saying you need to create the perception, the P, that if I increase my effort, I will increase my performance. If I increase my performance, I will have increased outputs. If I produced increased outputs, I will get increased rewards. But there's also going to be the perception that those rewards are worthwhile. And those four things need to be in play for people to increase the amount of effort or how motivated they feel. Now, one of the keys to this is that the rewards are worthwhile. So if you are asked to increase your effort or increase your performance, which will lead to increased outputs, if you feel that you're not getting a reward that is of value, you may say, why should I bother? So the expectancy model is about creating those linkages, but in my view, the most important is about making sure that people see the rewards as adding value. But when we're looking at Vroom's expectancy theory, there are other things that we need to take into account. And one is equity theory, which is by Adams from the 1960s. It is about the fairness of rewards. So people with similar inputs or outputs experience similar rewards, because people will compare the rewards with others. If inequity is perceived, contribution will be withheld. So in a way, it's about equal pay for work of equal value. So if people are saying, look, you're expecting me to do more and to achieve more, but I am not getting rewarded in a way that other people are rewarded, in other words, there is inequity, that will have a negative impact on motivation. There is also the concept of self-efficacy, which was coined by Bandura in 1977. And according to Bandura, self-efficacy is a person's particular set of beliefs that determine how well one can execute a plan of action in prospective situations. To put it in more simple terms, self-efficacy is a person's belief in their ability to succeed in a particular situation. So again, if we look back at Vroom's model, it is about, I have a belief that I have the skills and the knowledge to achieve what I need to achieve. It's having that self-efficacy. There are other things that come into play as well. Now, you may remember that the first slide had a picture of a carrot and a stick on it. Now, this is all about reinforcement. Now, let me just tell you a little story. There is a monastery high on a mountain, and every day at the crack of dawn, the abbot of the monastery rings the bell and he gets all the monks out of their dorms and he makes them run across the mountain terrain. And it doesn't matter what the weather's like, it could be scorching hot or freezing cold, and the terrain is treacherous. Now the abbot, because he is the abbot, has special privileges. He gets to ride a donkey. But he's got a job to do. And what he does is he hits the monk who's at the back of the running group. Now my question to you is that the monk who's been hit, who's at the back of the group, is he motivated to run to the front? Now, in my view, he's only motivated to make sure that he is second to last. And this is the danger with negative reinforcement. People will engage in a behaviour to avoid an unpleasant consequence, but you're not going to get highly motivated individuals. Likewise, if the abbot was at the front of the group, riding his donkey with some kind of positive reinforcement, will people be motivated to run to the front of the group? Well, this is where individual needs and wants come into play. Those reinforcements, those rewards, have got to be valuable. Otherwise, why should you bother? So this kind of reinforcement idea about positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement is flawed. Negative reinforcement, people will just do enough to avoid the negativity. The positive reinforcement depends upon the value of the rewards. And also about the punishment, discouraging behaviour by applying sanctions. It's not really going to lead to a motivated team. You're just going to get enough energy or enough effort to avoid punishment. But then there is the whole idea of extinction, where there is absence of any reinforcement. So if you're thinking about reinforcement, you've got to think about the value of what you are offering as a reward, and also the impact of this kind of negative reinforcement approach. Now, there is something else to factor in when we're talking about motivation, and that is the attitude and beliefs of the leader. So it's about leadership style, it's about attitude towards the people who are working for the leader, and this attitude will affect leadership behaviour, and therefore it will affect how you motivate people around you. This brings into play the work of the social psychologist Douglas McGregor. In the 1960s, McGregor developed two contrasting theories that explained how a leader's beliefs about what motivates their people can affect their leadership style. and you label these Theory X and Theory Y. Now, Theory X is a belief that people dislike work, that they must be forced to work, that they want to be directed, and that people are motivated mainly by money. Theory Y is a belief that work is necessary for psychological growth, that people can be self-directed and people can be self-disciplined and people want to realise their own potential. I guess it's about this kind of self-actualisation piece again, and that people seek responsibility and people are able to be creative. Now, these underpinning beliefs start to impact upon leadership style. So, for example, if you have a leader whose beliefs are Theory X, that people need to be directed, that they're fundamentally lazy, they're more likely to have an autocratic style. They will make assumptions of others, and they will probably apply sanctions, reward and punishment to actually motivate people. If the underpinning belief is Theory X, that people can be self-motivated, the leader's role is to create the right kind of conditions. It's about positive reinforcement. So how does a leader do this? Well, when we're looking at kind of leadership theory and we're talking about transformational leadership, our servant leadership, it's about creating an environment through which people can flourish and grow. So the leader's role is to create that positive environment where people can be self-directed, they can craft the job, and there is this belief that people want to be the best they possibly can be. Linked to Theory X and Theory Y is the work of Dr. William Uchi. Now, Uchi was basically saying that there is Theory Z. And Theory Z states that there needs to be close and cooperative relationships with those that people work with, and social interactions are as important as the work itself. And people have this kind of moral obligation to work hard, and this needs to be supported by the organisation. So people need to be trusted to do their jobs as long as the organisation looks after their needs. And Uchi was working on this and what he called his Japanese management style, which was popularised during the Asian economic boom of the 1980s. So what does this mean for managers? Well, it means that you need to know the needs and wants of your staff, help people see how the contribution that they make impacts upon the aims and values of the organisation. It's about valuing people's contribution, creating an environment where people feel supported by the organisation, but also about walking the job, looking at what people do, monitoring the work of individuals. So one question that always arises when you talk about motivation is the role of money or the role of pay. Is pay a motivational factor? Well, the answer is yes and no. Now, if we remember the kind of study that was taking place in the late 70s, where we were looking at the blue-collar workers and the white-collar workers, the argument is that when work is mundane and unchallenging, pay becomes more important, as people need to be motivated by things outside of work. The pay helps them to purchase things that give them that kind of self-motivation. When the work becomes more intellectually challenging, people tend to be motivated by the job itself. However, pay is still an incentive. There's got to be enough money on the table to make sure that pay is not an issue. And as long as there is enough money on the table to make sure that pay is not an issue, people will be motivated by the job. So it is quite complicated when you're looking about pay as a motivating factor. There's also the equity part to play as well. People need to see their pay as being equal to the effort that they're putting in, and also equity across different roles. Now, if there is equity and the work is challenging, we can talk about goal-setting theory. So Locke and Latham in 1990 were looking at the 5 goal-setting principles that improve our chances of success, that lead to motivation. And one thing that they said is that if we are setting goals, there's got to be clarity about what those goals are. Yeah, they've got to be clearly understood. Those goals have got to be challenging. Not impossible, but challenging. There's got to be a degree of commitment to those goals that you see them being worthwhile. There's also got to be feedback about what people are achieving and how people are moving towards their goals. And the fifth area is about task complexity. If the task becomes too complex, too difficult, the whole thing comes falling down like a stack of cards. So goal setting theory can be a motivational factor. As long as we are setting clear, challenging goals, we are looking at how we can make people committed to what they do, and that's about values and beliefs. That we are giving them feedback on a regular basis, and we're making sure that the job can be achieved, and we're not making people jump through too many hoops. So I'm going to finish with the work of Dan Pink. So Dan Pink is an American author, and he published a book called Drive. And in that book, he starts to look at motivation for the 21st century, especially in the knowledge economy. And he talks about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. But he looks at it in three ways. He talks about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So giving people the autonomy to do a job in the way they like to do the job. And there's a whole movement around job crafting at the moment, which is giving people parameters within which they need to work, but also giving people the freedom to shape their job within those parameters. So giving them autonomy. It's also about mastery, giving people the opportunity to use their skills and their knowledge to put them into practice. But also it's about purpose, giving people a sense of purpose, helping people see that what they do helps to achieve a bigger goal, the organisation's goal, the organisation's mission. So what Dan Pink is arguing is that motivation in the 21st century is about creating a situation where people feel they've got autonomy, they're able to use their skills, and they see what contribution they make to the organisation. And there's a great little video through RSA Animate which looks at Dan Pink's theory in a little bit more detail. So that's it. We've had a whistle-stop tour of motivation through the years. I hope you've enjoyed listening to this and reading the slides. What we will do when we get together online is to look at some of the impact of these motivational theories on the teams that you work with. And also I will send out some little questionnaires for you to complete, which looks at what motivates you. And again, we can have a conversation about those. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you online soon.